So, yesterday we discovered something important. You're already in a relationship to yourself. Is that so surprising? You never lost touch with your inner core. This quiet part of you has been there and available to you your entire life. Life simply taught many of us to relate to ourselves and others in different ways that felt simpler, easier, and more correct. And today, I'd like to explore something that naturally grows from that discovery. Remember, none of us grows up in isolation, and every relationship we experience teaches us something. And those lessons cover a large landscape of feelings and thoughts. Sometimes they're beautiful. Sometimes they're painful. Sometimes they're spoken out loud. Often they are never spoken at all. But every one of them influences the relationship we have with ourselves. So, before we move into today's work, I want to take a moment to continue the work we were doing when the internet left us at a bit of a standstill yesterday. So we had just finished our experience, and you guys had come out of your meditation, anybody who was here. And I'm going to ask you as much as possible to go back to that point in time. You had felt what it felt like to be in touch with your inner core and felt what it felt like when your adaptations were speaking. We hadn't really identified the adaptations yet, but we had just gone into feeling what it felt like when you were not coming from yourself. So, what felt, and you can speak or you can just think about it, what felt different from the two ways of being? And I'd love to have people share if they want, and you're not required.
Well, I can share. So I'm a very visual person, and for me, my core self is a bright spiritual light, very much connected to higher spiritual realm and the freedom of flow. And so for me, that's movement, visual imagery, and the adaptations. What was different, I've always been aware, of course, of how we're conditioned in life, how other people affect us, but I never really saw all of my adaptations like surrounding my core self. And so it's going to be a very interesting week, I think, to separate myself from those adaptations, talk to those adaptations, look at my
Interesting.
original core self. And so that was a different visual for me that I
I
had
like
never
that.
experienced. Yeah.
Were there any surprises in yesterday's experience? Anything that surprised you?
For me, it was really kind of coming back into my childhood self. I think that was a little bit surprising. That playful, innocent, childlike amazement, how we are when we're young children, just that feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if anyone else wants to speak, and so the self at your core never stopped being who it is. Life not never erased it. Life invited you to adapt. And those adaptations helped you to survive. They helped you belong. They helped you to move through the world. Over time, many of us begin living through from those adaptations more than the self at our core. And voice is a place where those adaptations are seen, not because speaking is the goal, but because voice reveals where you are living from. And it's just a thought as we go into our teaching for today. So, we're always learning how to be in relationship. Always. This will not ever stop. And that's one of the things to remember. We have chosen to come into a human suit. And that is all about growth and learning in every area of our lives. So long before we entered school and began to learn in a formal setting, before algebra and history or learning to drive, before knowing we were learning anything at all, we were learning the most important lessons at all. We were learning what life began to teach us. Who do I need to be to belong? Who do I need to become to be loved? Who do I need to become to stay safe? Who do I need to be to avoid conflict? Who do I need to be to, you fill in the blank?
Mhm.
Most of us don't ever consciously answer these questions. Your nervous system does it. And as children, you simply adapt, adapt, and adapt. There is no limit, no finite number of adaptations that you can bring in. It's not like you can have 10 or you can have 25. There is no finite number. Adaptations are expressions of intelligence, maybe not IQ, but life intelligence. And I want to pause here because this is incredibly important. I don't want you looking back on your life with judgment. I don't want you looking back with shame. I want you looking back with compassion, with curiosity, and with the knowing that every adaptation you developed made sense. Some helped you to avoid criticism. Some helped you to keep peace. Some helped you to earn approval. Some helped you to survive in environments that felt unpredictable or unsafe. And when we're very young, our minds aren't saying, is this true? They're asking, what do I need to do to belong, to be loved, to stay safe? Young, let me turn that off. My apologies. Young children don't have the ability to sort through life's experiences and decide what is true, what isn't, what belongs to someone else, or what they can simply let go of and let pass through. They absorb the world around them exactly as it comes. This isn't my opinion. We mentioned neuroscience yesterday. Neuroscience will keep coming back in because neuroscience plays such a strong role in how young children develop and how adaptations come into being. And again, this is not a science course, so I am giving you just enough here to use as backup. If you want the full story, you can go look it up on Dr. Google. You'll get some good information and you'll have to use your own judgment to know what is absolutely right. If love feels conditional, children don't think, my dad is struggling. They think, I need to be different. I need to be lovable. If criticism is constant, they don't think, something is happening to mom. They think, something must be wrong with me. I better do it perfect. They aren't making logical conclusions. They're making rational ones, emotional ones. Most of us as children think with our emotional brain first, not our intellectual brain. They're learning how to survive in the world the best way they know how. And that's exactly what they're designed to do. Those adaptations weren't mistakes. They were intelligent responses to the relationships they were living in. And those adaptations don't disappear when childhood ends because the subconscious mind takes stuff in without a filter. And it doesn't simply release it. It stays there until you do something that releases it. It requires action, thinking, learning, releasing. All kinds of things that are a level beyond simply knowledge. So they grew up with us, the adaptations, without changing, maturing, or moving forward in any way. So your adaptations are still at age 4, 5, 7. The little girl who learned to stay quiet is now the woman who cannot ask for what she needs, let alone what she wants. The child who became responsible for everyone else's emotions now feels guilty every time she does anything for herself, and very likely rarely takes the time to, while building resentment that she has created a life where she disappeared. The young person who learned that being perfect brought praise may now feel absolutely exhausted holding everything together. Each of these is a different story on the surface, being serviced by a different adaptation, but the same relationship is underneath every single one of them. And here's something else that's important to remember. These adaptations don't live in our conscious awareness. Their being in control is not a choice. These patterns became part of the subconscious mind's way to keep you safe. It doesn't sound safe, does it? Remember, they were created usually before you were age 7. It happens automatically, under the radar, most of the time before you even realized anything is happening. You are on your way. We completely stop noticing the adaptations. They feel like us. They have simply become familiar parts of ourselves. And what is familiar often begins to feel like who we are. They've been operating quietly beneath the surface for years. You don't wake up one morning and decide, today I'll people please, or today I'm going to abandon myself. I've always been this way. I'm just a people pleaser. I'm an anxious person. I'm just bad at conflict. That was mine. I grew up in violence. I would do anything to avoid conflict because it was dangerous. I didn't know if I would end up having to take care of my mother. I mean, you could never go to the hospital. You could never get outside help because that would reveal the whole structure of the family. We might be known as a family that was dysfunctional. That couldn't happen. So avoiding conflict was so important that I shut down my emotions completely. What if those aren't your identity? What if they're simply relationships you've practiced the longest? And that's why they can feel so difficult to change. Awareness brings the subconscious into the light. And this is important because you can't consciously choose something that you haven't consciously recognized. Only once you can see it can you begin to be in relationship with it. Today isn't about deciding whether they're right or they're wrong. It's about becoming curious. When fear speaks, can you recognize it? When perfection speaks, can you recognize it? When guilt speaks, can you recognize it? When your mother's voice shows up, can you recognize it? When your own quiet knowing appears, can you recognize that too? Not so you can push them away, simply so you begin to notice who is speaking. Sean, you want to talk a little bit about the adaptations that you are aware of that speak through you?
One of them is one that is very simple. I say that kind of sarcastically. I'm a people pleaser with words, not with follow through. That's an adaptation I got from my father. I will say the things to make you happy and then just never follow through. Another is this one I'm not sure where I got, but I'm a reader, a voracious reader. It's either school or way to and deal with being different. Those are the two big ones I can think of off the top of my head.
So every single one of us has these. But when we can start to know who is speaking, discernment creates choice. Yesterday, you discovered you have a relationship with yourself. Today, you'll begin to discover all the relationships that have quietly shaped that one relationship. And this is not so you can reject them or blame them. It is so you can begin consciously deciding which relationships you want to continue strengthening and which ones no longer get to decide how you live. So I'm going to go ahead and offer you a break here if you need to go get a drink or use the bathroom.
Do not forget to pause the recording.
Thank you, Sean. So we were having a little bit of a question and answer that arose spontaneously during the break. And I'm going to say, does anybody else have any questions before we go into the participant experience? Or are we complete? Cynthia? Complete? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and go into the participant experience. And this one will be quite different from yesterday's. You know, yesterday's experience was very much an internal journey where you just were with yourself. And while I'm never going to tell you what you have to experience, it's your experience. The idea of this one is kind of like you're sitting in the middle of an inner council. So if that's not what you get, that's okay. It's your experience. And that is the idea of the design. So I want you to return briefly, thinking back to your inner soul, to that innermost piece of you, just reconnecting a little bit with yesterday's experience. And now I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to notice the voices that arise around this question. You don't need to answer them. You don't need to, we're just wanting to notice them. I want to make a change. Immediately notice what appears. Might be, you should. You can't. What if? People will. You need. Don't do that. That's selfish. You're too old. You're too young. Be realistic. Stay safe. Don't disappoint. Don't get your hopes up. Or anything else that is just yours. All you're doing now is listening to what comes up. No judging. Now, I want you to become curious. If this voice had a source, where might it have come from? And you don't need to be exact. A feeling, a guess is good. You might recognize a parent, school, religion, a painful experience you went through, a role, society. No analysis, no judgment, just curiosity. Now I'd like to invite you to notice something different. For the last few minutes, you've been listening. You may have noticed fear, expectations, memories, old beliefs, perhaps the voice of a parent or your own self-doubt, perhaps encouragement you received along the journey of your life, perhaps hope. Who has been listening to all of them? Don't answer, just notice. There is a part of you that has been quietly aware of every voice that has appeared, simply noticing and observing. It hasn't argued, it hasn't judged. Tune into that part of you and rest there for a moment. Do you feel what just happened? The soul isn't another contestant on the panel. It's the one sitting at the head of the table, listening. From this place of awareness, tune in once more. The voices will still be there, they don't disappear. Simply notice which ones create contraction in your body, which ones create openness. Which ones feel hurried? Which ones feel steady? You aren't deciding who is right. You're simply learning how each relationship feels inside of you. That's discernment, not deciding, feeling. Most of us grow up believing we have only one inner voice. Today, you've experienced something different. There are many voices within us. Some are adaptations, and these can show up as our fears, old expectations, and forgotten wisdom, as well as the more familiar characters you have met today. I want you to go ahead and start coming back fully into your awareness and into your body. You know, discernment isn't about making those voices disappear. It's about becoming aware that you are the one listening to them. And once you become aware, you no longer have to react automatically. You can begin relating to each one consciously. That is the beginning of freedom. So at this point, I'm going to ask everybody if you have any questions, anything you'd like to share.
One thing that I see is that discernment gives you choices.
Yes,
It allows you to see possibilities. And then you choose where to go from there.
right. It goes, oh, I recognize that adaptation. I can choose whether to let it drive today. Does that serve me? Because sometimes it'll serve you.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can choose to say, hey, you are amazing and you have done such amazing things for me. And today it's my turn to drive. Melody, I see you took yourself off.
I was just thinking, uh, don't have the thoughts all quite together yet.
Okay,
Mhm.
no problem. Do you have something, Suzanne?
Well, it almost feels kind of like a black and white movie in a way for me. So I connected to like my really youngest self at like 11 o'clock, like a clock, and go around. Like my soul's in the middle, but all of the characters are up through to today at like 10:55 on the clock. So I think that's just kind of interesting. It's, you hear about your life flashing before you sort of as a black and white film, and it kind of feels like that in a way.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody experiences it differently, and there is no right way, no wrong way. Your way is your way. So,
Yeah, I was
and
just going to
no,
give you that visual for me of what I saw.
yeah, I love how visually things come through for you. You know, all of you can reach out at any time with anything. I'm always here. But as we move forward, I want you to do the following: pause, notice, and then ask, what am I hearing? What am I feeling? Who will make this decision? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? Who will make this decision? And I want to remind everybody that coming home to yourself is begun in this 4-day event. And that this is not usually completed in a 4-day time period. So Sean and I love taking people further on this journey and being there as your support. And we'll be talking to you more about that tomorrow and Thursday, and also how to have a free spiritual assessment with us. So I thank you so much for being here with us today. Take care and have an amazing and wonderful day.
Namaste.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay, everyone. We will get the recording out by around 3 p.m. today. Pacific Standard Time, that is.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.